Welcome to Math for Understanding. In this video today, you will learn what fractions are. You'll also learn how to compare fractions. Using 3 different ways. And lastly, you will learn what is that even possible? Alright, let's look at some models that we can use to show fraction. So the first one is our area model. The reason why it's called an area model is because it uses a rectangle. So if this fraction was out of 5, it would be a 5 by 1 rectangle. So here's 3/5. Another way we could model it is using a number line. So here's our whole, which is 5 out of 5. And here's our 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and there is our 3/5. Okay, this is a number line. And lastly, we can have a fraction strip. In a fraction strip, you can see the comparison between the different fractions. So let's say we did all of the fractions. So here's our whole, here's our halves, our thirds, quarters, and fifths. So your half would be somewhere here, and then your third, and then your quarter, and then your fifth, and there's your 3/5. Okay, and this is our fraction strip. Okay, now let's look at comparing fractions. So our first method is using a common denominator. So the common denominator is based on the least common multiple of the two denominators. Here's an example. Let's do an example. 2/3 versus 3/5. So the least common multiple for 3 and 5 is 15. Let's draw these fractions. Here's 2/3. And here's 3/5. I'm going to draw the fifths the other direction. And you'll see why. Okay. So, here's our 3/5. And here's our 2/3. And as you can see, it's hard to tell which one is greater, because the pieces are not the same size. So what we want to do is make the pieces all the same. And that's where our equivalent fractions come in. So when we make equivalent fractions, what we're doing is we're actually further dividing this whole into more parts so that they both now have the same number of parts. So to make this thirds into 15 parts, we want to divide it into further fifths. And for this one, we're going to divide this into thirds. As you can see, now we have 15 parts for both of these. And this, that was once 3 out of 5, is now 9 out of 15. And the 2/3 is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 out of 15. Now that we have the same denominator, we can clearly see that this is greater, so therefore we know that 2/3 is greater than 3/5 because we found the equivalent fractions, and there you go. Okay, so now we are going to look at how we can use a common numerator. So this time we're looking at the numerator instead of the denominator. We're still looking at the least common multiple, and this time we're looking for the least common multiple for 2 and 3, which is 6. So 2/3 and 3/5. So if we want to make this, which is our thirds, and then this is our fifths, so here's our 3/5. So what we're going to do now is turn the numerator into 6. So how do we do that? Well, if we have 2 of these, then that means we have to cut these into further thirds. And this, we have 3, so we have to further halve this. So now we have 6 of those. So let's take a look. Now we have 2/3, which is actually equivalent to 6 out of, and you can see this is out of 9. And our 3/5 is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, except it's now going to be out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 10. And you can see it's very close. 1 is 6 out of 9 and 1 is 6 out of 10. So therefore we know 3/5 is greater than 2/3. Okay, and for our last method, we're going to look at comparing using 1/2 as a comparison. So our fractions, we said, were 2/3 and 3/5. So out of 3, halfway is 1.5. So that's equal to half. Out of 5, 2.5 equals 1/2. And you can see that from 2 to 1/2 is 0.5 out of 3 more than half. And this one is 0.5 as well, but it's out of 5. So this is 10%. And because this is less, this is greater than 10%. So what this means is that this fraction, 3/5, is 10% away from 1/2, whereas 2/3 is more than 10% away from 1/2, which makes this fraction greater. So 3/5 is 10% away from 1/2, and 2/3 is more than 10% away from 1/2. Therefore, 2/3 is less than 3/5. Now, to be exact, 2/3 is 16% away. It's actually about 16.6% away from 1/2. So you can see this is definitely farther from 1/2, making this fraction smaller than 3/5. And there you go, 3 ways to compare fractions. Thank you for watching Math for Understanding. Make sure you subscribe. and leave a comment.